Hello and welcome to the edition of The Long Talk. And today I have got a really interesting one because I've talked to various administrators, I've talked to various players, I've talked to various coaches as well. But this will be the first time I've got to talk to an international player and coach who's been born in a tier 2 country and seen how they've come up through their rugby journey. So far it's always been people who've come from New Zealand and then gone on to play for Samoa. But today I have got Francisco Jose Deformes of Chile and the Hawke's Bay Rugby Union. How are you doing, sir?
Very well, mate. Very good. Happy to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation.
No, thank you very much. As I say, it's going to be a really interesting one because, as I say, we don't normally hear the early journeys in places like Chile. So, what is your first rugby memory?
Well, that's a good one. At school, I was lucky enough that my parents made the decision to put me in a so-called British school in Chile, which are basically English teaching schools down there. And they happened to have this sport called rugby, which I had no idea about, never heard about before. So I walked into that school at 7 years old and first gym class, we grabbed this ball and, whatever we're watching the movies, you're talking about the mid-80s, in South America. So whatever we're watching the movies was American football. So we were used to the round ball of soccer or football. And then we get this ball and then we don't have any helmets or things and we start playing. And to be honest, I was a big fat kid when I was a kid, so when I was 7 years old. So I was kind of the only instance I could grab the ball and run through people and, smash people. So that's how we all started, that's how I fell in love with this game.
So, this is one of the things I've talking with people or talking with coaches and administrators, like at the age of 7, it was full contact rugby as well, wasn't it? There was no touch, no ripper. It was just full real rugby from the start.
Full contact, to be honest, mate. We didn't have video games or things like that to get entertained. So I guess, the physicality of rugby or anything was much more, fun than, doing anything else. And I wasn't just a boys' school. So also was all this thing that who was the strongest, who was the fittest, who was the smartest. Yeah, it was also a good thing, but, it was better, to be strong and fit and all those things.
Cool. And so, when did you actually start? When was the first time you sort of watched an international rugby game or a top tier rugby game? Did you watch that as a kid as well, or or did that come later?
Oh, this is another one. Really funny. So you can imagine within back in the 80s in Chile, we didn't even have cable TV, so we just watched national stuff. Okay, so rugby on TV, that never happened, and. We were lucky enough in that school. We had a library, with full of books and information. There were some rugby books there, and also there was a video. I don't know, a store. I don't know how you can call it, a video club. Mm-hmm. And in there, you had, somehow people managed to bring the Six Nations games and. This year was 1987, and we had the World Cup final, France versus New Zealand. So, I went to the library, asked for the video, Betamax, I think it was still, not even VHS, and I went back home, put it on, and didn't move from my seat, for 2 hours. And that was the first ever rugby game I ever watched. France versus New Zealand at Eden Park, 1987.
Wow.
So that was me sitting there. My mom came and said, "What are you watching? What is that?" And then a couple of friends came to knock on the door to play with me, and I was like, "No, just leave me alone. I'm busy, watching that." So that was my first international rugby match I ever watched. And to be honest, till I was probably 14, 15 years old, that cable TV came to South America, to Chile specifically. That's how I watch rugby, through the school library, and that was it.
And the videos, the Beastmax big cassettes. Oh, fantastic! So obviously you played through school then, and what did you then join a rugby club in Chile, or was it university that you kept playing?
Okay, so basically in those years, mainly the rugby was through the British schools. So it was a very strong competition between the schools over there, in a couple of cities of Chile. So I played all the ranks, and I was the captain of my first 15 when I finished school. And then, I joined right away university for 4 or 5 years, and I played for. We have an old boys club. It's called Old Mackayans. So my school is called the Mackay School. So it was called the Old Mackayans Club, and I played through my whole university studies through in the club. That was like the senior competition. That is the national championship of Chile. Yeah.
And then so when did sort of international or when did you get the idea of becoming that you might be able to do it sort of professionally and go and play overseas and that kind of thing?
Well,
or was that more by accident than by design?
No, it wasn't by accident. It was something I always dreamed of. So the moment I watched this All Blacks France game, and it was in New Zealand, I never heard of New Zealand before. Imagine that, So, and I said to my mom, I want to play rugby when I'm growing up. I want to be a professional rugby player. My mom was there's no professional rugby, not even in Chile, and there's never anywhere in the world. So I was, to be honest, before this thing of playing rugby overseas, I always wanted to travel overseas, because my dad was a Navy officer, and he happened to get married later in life. So he got married around 40. So when I was born, we didn't travel too much, but I grew up listening to his stories going around the world when he was deployed in the UK, when he was, in Australia. And it was like, I want to do that. So when I was growing up, my mates, in the neighborhood at school were talking about, the business they wanted to achieve, the family they want to have. And I was all talking about going to live somewhere else. And then, rugby was like, yeah, I want to do this. I want to play rugby. So since I was a kid, I always wanted to. But, when I was finishing university, because I said, I need to get Chile is all about degrees. So you need your degree. Whatever you're nothing, especially when you went to a private school without your degree. So I said to myself, I need to get this degree first. Mm-hmm. So I went to uni, but then I had the idea of going overseas and play rugby. I knew that, I was coming from Chile, so it was going to be really hard to get an opportunity overseas, especially at a higher level. So I just, started looking for it. And it happens to be there was a Chilean guy, a friend of mine, that was living, he had an Italian passport, and he was living and playing rugby in Congo. So this club that, he wasn't professional, obviously, but they helped the players, and he was, having a job, and then also, playing rugby. And he said to me when I was, in my last year of university, you want to come and play for us? And I come on a tourist visa, play over here, and just get the experience and go back home. I said, yeah, why not? So the moment that I finished university, after 3 days, so I finished, I remember mid-July on 2003 or 4, and then 3 days after, I was on a plane to England.
Wow. Now, before we get on to that, you mentioned your father was in the Navy. I see that you're in a group that's called the Chile Navy Reserve. So yep. Have you been part of the Navy?
Yes, I was. I did my Navy Reserve officer training for a year, and I was part of the Navy Reserve, but obviously because now I'm living overseas, I'm kind of on hold. Still, yep. My name is on the records over there, and I keep talking to people all the time, but I'm not officially part of the reserve. But yeah, I grew up in a Navy base. My dad was a Navy officer who was an admiral. My brother was in the Navy school for a couple of years. I have plenty of friends in the Chilean Navy. And then, it's something I always liked, but I liked rugby more. So that was my other option in life, I think. One was sports and rugby, and I was joining the Navy. And I said, nah, probably I want to give it a go to rugby. It's less traditional. I'm kind of a rebel, I want to do things that people tell me I can't, So, yeah.
Well, if I look at where you've been in the world, so you've mentioned you've gone to Cornwall, you end up in New York, obviously the Northland, you've been now down in Hawke's Bay. A lot of the time, you are by the sea. So yeah, getting out in the water, is that an important thing for you? Do you like sort of sailing or boating?
I like sailing, boating, and actually going to the beach and just swimming. I love it. I grew up, as I say, in a coastal city related to the sea. And, it's funny because you will understand me, when back in the days when you have no internet, no nothing, you just have to go outside the house in summer and just go and do something. I just walk. I live 5 minutes out of the beach. So I just walk to the beach every day and just hang there, surf, try to do anything related to the water. So yeah, it's important. And sometimes I do struggle when I'm not near the sea for even just the chance to walk down to the beach and sit down there, and just appreciate how beautiful it is. It's kind of relaxing and give me a lot of headspace to think about, my stuff, and it keeps me happy.
Cool. Well, I guess we're not going to see you at the Chiefs in Hamilton then, because obviously the only landlocked Super Rugby side. But anyway, before that, let's go back. So you had your time in you spent or at least half a season there in Cornwall, and then over to Madrid, which must have been the part of your life where you weren't near the sea. But so when you say you went to English school, does that mean you were taught in English at the school, or were the lessons still in Spanish?
Most of the stuff. So until you are 12, so when you join the school, until you're 12, you taught everything in English. So math, science, everything. And then it changes, and then you have everything in Spanish, and then you have English class. But then the idea of them is to build the base of English while you're really, really young. Mm-hmm. And then, that school, I'm very grateful of that school because gave me actually the two things that I'm passionate about, so one is English, which is a very valuable tool in the world today. And then the other one is rugby, So those two things are the ones that I really, really appreciate from the school. But yeah, I mean, I was lucky enough. So sort of those things, you don't choose the country you're born, and you don't choose the school you go, So it's a decision that somebody or something else made for you, And I was lucky enough to have that one,
So that meant, okay. So when you moved to Cornwall, communicating wasn't the problem. You had good English, and so things like line out calls and things you're okay with. You didn't have to worry about having to translate it all.
No, English. I'm actually quite good at languages. I'm not the best, but I kind of get the languages, quite easier than a lot of people. So maybe, I played a little bit in Italy also. And then in Italy, after I had no idea of Italian or anything. And after a couple of weeks, I started picking it up, and after a month or so, I was kind of fluent in Italian. So yeah, languages, because of my interest of traveling the world, I think I had always an interest in learning languages. For them, if I tell you something, I'm actually now in lockdown, I'm learning German, don't ask me why, I just like it, everyone told me it's really hard to learn German at this age. I said, okay, mate, I'm gonna do it. So I joined a course online. I'm doing an hour of German every day.
Wow, well done. You're improving yourself more than I am. And I guess your first big break was playing for Plymouth Albion.
Yes,
that would be in the Rugby Championship, or the RFU Championship. Sorry.
That was the National One those years.
National One. Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, it's so then they changed it. So those years you had the Premiership, and then you have National 1, 2, and 3, and now you have a Premiership, a Championship, and then National 1, 2, 3. Wow. And Plymouth was, in the second tier of English rugby, which is Plymouth was the National 1 those years. Yeah, and that was the first professional experience I had. You're right. Plymouth, in South England.
So who was your coach and things there? I'm trying to think who was around at
a legend called Graham Dole. You remember him? Hooker, used to play for Bath.
Okay.
He used to play for England. Well, he was actually, he didn't play much for England, but he was in the England team for a long time. Do you remember he played during the 80s when you were not allowed to sub? So you were only allowed to replace in case of injury, so Brian Moore was ahead of him, and Brian Moore got ahead of him after I don't know which game of a Five Nations those years against England, against Wales, in Wales, I think Cardiff Arms Park in those years, that there was a little bit of a scrap between, the front row of England. So Gary Chilcott was there and Graham Daw with the Welsh guys. I think Dorsey was banned for a couple of weeks or a month or whatever. So that's when Brian Moore jumped on, and he got the starting position and then never got out of that. I think that was the story. So yeah, and a very interesting character because he was Dorsey was a player coach still. He was 47 years old and he was still playing some bit of rugby. So yeah, it was really hard on players and people, but when you were on his side, probably he was really, really good to you. And also he was a very good role model, because he was 47 years old and he was fit and he was working hard and he was, playing tough. So it was a good experience to come, across a guy like him, to be honest.
Yeah, and you'd have had, obviously, you've had a couple of good derbies down there because you've been playing Cornish Pirates, or they probably weren't called Pirates at the time. You'd have Exeter as well. We're also down in probably both in National One at the time. So you had, the West Country or down there in that area was a real hotbed of rugby. So yeah, you'd be in your element there. I mean, football isn't that big down there. I mean, there is a football team in Perth, but it's much more rugby.
Yeah, Plymouth Argyle. Now, the southwest of England is rugby is way bigger. I don't know, in Cornwall especially, they love the rugby much more than any other sports. Of course, it is England. You have all the sports down there, but rugby has kind of the identity, with the Cornish people. Sense of this sense, I think, in Cornwall happened what it happened a little bit in Wales. So back in the days when the game wasn't professional, the miners and the working class people was playing rugby, and there was very tough people that play the game. So if you were going down to Cornwall to play the game of rugby, you'll have some fun,
So you just did one season there, and then before you headed back to Chile, is that right? Or
I headed back to Chile on.
So it says sort of 2009 to 2012. You were with that's your old school, isn't it? The McKay School.
Yeah. So what happened is I headed back to Chile because my dad got ill.
Oh, okay.
So I said for family reasons, I just said I'm going to go back for a bit, and then my father passed away, and I stayed for 2-3 years over there, and I'm actually, probably for my playing career that wasn't the best, but for my coaching career was actually very good because I worked as a PE teacher at the Mackay School. And working as a PE teacher in school gives you a lot of tools and a lot of experience to when you become a coach, because you're dealing with a lot of, on-the-go problems you have to solve really quickly. You have to engage, you have to keep people, happy. So that's for those years is where I think I started learning the trade for becoming a coach later.
But you also got your break as an international player as well. You played against Tonga in 2010.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Had changed now. Fortunately for the tier 2 countries. When I was an international player, and I was the captain of Chile for a couple of seasons, we had 5-4 international games a year. And we always had the chance to play with the same guys. So Brazil, Uruguay, a team from Argentina, which is never the starting Pumas, and then the odd, team that goes, on tour to Argentina and wants to come and play to Chile. So, Fiji wasn't there once, Tonga was there once, a team from France was there once, and we played against them. But we never get the chance to play too much. Nowadays, they have a lot of international competitions, and then also they are playing much more against the North American teams of Canada and the US, and so that had improved a lot of the competition. Because as a coach, and I'm convinced that the more you play international, the more you test yourself against the better teams, the better you're going to get. And those years wasn't the case. So I had to be happy with what I could play, which is the South American teams.
Yeah. Well, according to ESPN, and obviously don't always believe the internet, you had that game against Tonga. You also played Portugal, in 2012, and then also Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay in 2013. So so you were captain during those during 2012, 2013. You say?
I was so against Tonga in 2010 and against Portugal in 2012. I was the captain, and then 2013 we had a change of the head coach, and I moved to the US, to New York, to play and coach over there. And then, of course, because I wasn't there, they had another captain. But I came and played, the South American tournament that year.
Cool. And anyone that you sort of propped against that you thought that impressed you back in those days, or any famous people you remember playing against in either, I guess, Tonga and Argentina?
Quite a few. I mean, Argentinians. When I was younger, we played against a very good. I remember South American tournament in 2002. They put, very good front row with I think it was Grau, which played the World Cup, and then Mendes as a hooker was very good. That was a hard day at the office, to be honest. Then, I played against the Argentinians on 2011 before they left for the World Cup, so they had, Figalo there, they had Crevi. I was also playing at the Argentinian scrum. It's always going to be hard, especially when you play in South America, and especially when they play probably tier 2 nations, because one thing they're going to show, their strength, and you're gonna put the pressure on is in the scrum, because they know they can do it, so they go hard. Then when I was in England, I remember playing against Dan Cole when he was at Bedford Blues. I think he was Bedford Blues.
Yeah, so in the championship.
But back when I was in Plymouth, good scrummager also, and who else?
So you've played a few more matches than the ESPN has given you credit for as an international.
Yeah, true. That's true. Yeah.
Oh dear. And then as you say, that move up to Old Blue in New York for a season as a player coach. Old Blue, very famous club in the USA. One of where before MLR was where you probably find quite a few of the American international players that were domestic based might be playing. So was it? Did you have a few of the Eagles in your side there?
We had Luke Hume, who was a winger. Luke Hume, a very good player. He was there. That was the only one that was playing for the Eagles at the time. Then full Eagles, that was the only one. Yeah, I can remember. Then we had a guy, Trevor Cassidy, is a lock that now plays for Rudy's, for Rugby United New York.
Yep.
I think he played a couple of games for the Eagles, but he wasn't a full Eagle, not yet. But Luke Hume was the biggest one, and he was a seventh player, very good one.
Oh no, absolutely, yeah. So you did a season there, and then over to Cornish Pirates as a So how did that move come about? So
in New York, so the guy that was coach is Marty Bill. Was actually a Kiwi guy that I met in Northland back in the day, and then he was.
So it seems like we've missed part of the journey then. So you got the coaching job in New York because you'd been to Northland before, or you met him afterwards?
Yeah. So it was a player coaching job in New York, more a player than a coach, but that's where I really started my scrummaging coaching, in New York. So I played one season of club rugby in Northland, back in 2008, and I was in the wider training group for the Northland, the Tanifa.
Yep.
And I played a couple of preseason games, there. And I met Maryville, he was playing with us for Northland that year. And he is now one of the coaches of Rugby United New York. He was the scrum coach for the Soundwolves last year. So I met him over there in Northland and became, good friends with him. And then he went to the US after playing for Wasps in England. And then one year he just sent me a text, mate, do you want to come on New York? I need a prop and you can help me with the scrummaging coaching. And and off I went. Off I went over there. And that was it. And then when I was in New York, I was finishing that year over there, and then I had a chat with them. I always kept in contact with them, people from the Pirates, and my mate Alan Paves, which is now one of the coaches of the Pirates, was, he became a player coach, one of the player coaches in the Pirates with Gavin Cattle, who was the other guy, and a head coach. And he said to me, "Do you want to come over here? We're missing a prop." And I said, yeah, why not? Because I knew I was turning 33, I think, and I said, this is my last chance to go back into that level. And off I went, and I played one season with the Pirates, and then the second season was the last one. There was one too many, that was the one that you always injured, you're too old, and there's the younger guys were coming in through. And the moment I said, well, this is it, it was not a B team. So sometimes, when we didn't make the team for playing the weekend, sometimes we put another team and played another team. So we played the Cornwall team. It was preparing for the
county championship.
Campus championship, yeah. And I was playing tight head, and then I was gonna turn 36 that year. I was 35, and the hooker and the loose head prop I was playing with were 18 each other. So their age combined was my age, almost my age, and that's when I said, okay, this is it, man. I can't play anymore this game. And then, of course, my neck was sore. I had a chronic neck injury, and then I couldn't play for a certain amount of weeks. And then the club kind of finished my contract a little bit earlier than the end of the season, but I was okay with that. It was going to happen. So, yeah, it was good fun, to be honest. But there's a point that you have to pack it and say, okay, that's it.
Yeah, I think what people need to understand is that the at that level, the contracts. Some players even play have sort of week-to-week contracts, or some players can just be just pay as you play. So those contracts are not very secure.
Yeah.
Unlike the next level up, where it's all season long and they're all standard contracts. Down at the next level beneath that, it very quickly gets close to semi-amateurism.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Certainly in the administration side of it. So you finished up there in March 2016, and then you decided to go traveling. I think from our last conversation, you decided to go through Europe, experience things like the Hong Kong Sevens, etc. So through Asia, not through Europe.
Yeah, Asia. But first of that, I went to the US for a couple of months. I had friends that were in South Florida. I had a friend that was coaching a team in the Gulf Coast in Florida, Southwest Florida. So imagine, it was like finishing the English winter, and I said, my mate tells me, "Oh, come over here for a month or something like that, and then, you will help me with the coaching." So I went over there, and I was doing anything, going to the beach in the day, and then a couple of times a week I was, helping my mate to coach. And from there, yes, I went through Asia. I went to Hong Kong to visit.
Actually, before we move on to that, I mean, Florida's got some good sevens tournaments as well, hasn't it? It's there's quite an active sevens program down there.
Yeah, well, in the States, it's funny. It's a big country, and they have more rugby than people think. We went to some tournaments, and then there was a lot of people there, a lot of teams from everywhere. Of course, the level is not like the top level, over here, or top level anywhere, but there's actually a lot of rugby. They have some, as you said, some beach tournaments are also big, like beach rugby.
Mm-hmm.
They're also really big. Some teams, organize those tournaments during the year and are very, very successful, and it's good fun. It's more of a social thing. They have a few beers and they have fun and they go out on the pitch or whatever. But that's, rugby is also about, having fun. So a little bit of that is also good. And yeah, after that, I went through Asia. So I went to Hong Kong to visit a friend, and then Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, Bali, and came back to Hong Kong that year. It was December 2016 for Christmas and New Year, and that's when another friend of mine from Northland, gave me a text and said, "Mate, you want to come over here?"
So did you get involved with any of the teams in Hong Kong, like either Hong Kong Football Club or Valley or KCC? I mean, they're kind of, or at least the kind of the teams there, or did you not get involved in the scene there?
No, I didn't get involved officially. I met a lot of guys from Valley Rugby, and went to have a look at a couple of training sessions for the Hong Kong Cricket, I think it is. Hong Kong Cricket is the other one.
Hong Kong Cricket Club, yep.
Yeah, Hong Kong Cricket. So I met a lot of people from the rugby environment, but as I wasn't going to stay over there, was the point of getting too involved with anybody,
Yeah.
So yeah, I just went to visit. Of course, I love rugby, so wherever I go, I want to look for a rugby club to at least go and have a chat, see what they're doing. So I did that. Met some good people. I still in touch sometimes with people from Hong Kong, rugby. But then when I didn't know what to do, this my mate from Northland told me, why don't you come back over here to New Zealand? And off I went. That was it. Yeah.
And again, here on a visitor visa, having a bit of fun, helping out coaching, and then someone says, "Hey, do you mind giving us a hand with Northland scrummaging?" Yeah,
that was kind of the way it went. So yeah, I went to visit my friend, and then I started, coaching club level, Midwestern Club, which is a club in Mangakaramia outside of Whangarei. My friend put me in contact with the president of the club, and the president of the club said, just coach us, I'll help you a little bit, because I know we cannot pay you or you cannot get any job. So the reason why I kind of contacted the Northern Rugby Union is because I was, actually not allowed to work. So I was only doing Tuesdays, Thursdays, and the weekends, on the rugby coaching. And apart from that, I was doing nothing. So I sent an email. I contacted one of the guys in Northern, the manager, Brad Teara, that I knew him from before. And I said to him, mate, I want to do an internship with you guys because I have a PE degree. I love the strength and conditioning. Why don't you put me in contact with the SNC coach? And he put me in contact with Tim Hurst, which is now he's actually the head SNC for Waikato Rugby. And Hurst told me, yeah, mate, just come on how Kiwis are, very friendly and open. And so start helping me with the gym. So I started going, twice a week at nights to the gym with the boys were training, the high performance group, they call it. And in that, scene is when I started having conversations with Topsy, Darren Whitcomb, who was a head coach of Northern at that time, and talking about scrums and blah, 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 blah. And then, we had a coffee around scrums. And then he said, well, would you be interested in help me with the scrum coaching over here? Because I might need a scrum coach. And I said, yeah, so he gave me the chance to do one session and he liked it. And yeah, so officially that year I became the assistant scrum coach and an intern on, strength and conditioning. That was a really, really, really good fun year, 2017. I learned a lot, I kind of got more comfortable with the provincial rugby in New Zealand, met a lot of people. And then, after that year, they gave me a contract as an official, scrum coach for the next year.
But you've talked about the fact that you're learning German at the moment. You've always been into this, kind of good at this kind of self-improvement. Looking at this, you're a certified personal trainer from the American Council of Exercise. You've got your sports management from the Chilean Olympic Committee. You've got weightlifting qualification as well for training, as well as obviously you got your rugby coaching badges, and then even got you're even a yoga teacher. So it does seem that you can't. Whenever you got some time off, you just got to get yourself another certificate and learn a new skill.
I sound like a jack of all trades, mate. Yeah. To clarify, a couple of those certifications, I have to renew them, So, my personal trainer one, I have to retake the test. I'm actually, trying to using lockdown time to go through, my studies and retake the test because it's a nice thing to have. I always liked it. So, the Olympic lifting one, I need to actually pay my membership to get it renewed. And then Well, yoga, yeah, that was different. To be honest, mate. Yeah, I'm always looking to improve myself. That's really, really, really a thing for me. And it's more than it's a lot of PED, professional development, but it's also personal development.
Yep.
When I came to New Zealand, Dapsy introduced this yoga instructor for Northland. So he was coming once a week to do a yoga session with the boys, and then we were allowed to go to his studio so that's why I started practicing, and I said, like, this is helping me, and then I start to get more curious about the philosophical aspect of the yoga and the mindfulness and the meditation, everything that comes behind just of the physical practice. So I started to get engaged with that, started learning a little bit more. And last year, when I was here in Hawke's Bay, it was the year of my 40th birthday. So I said, I'm birthday on 21st of December. So I knew I was going to be on holidays. And then I had one of these light bulb moments that you were like sitting, thinking about it. I said, like, well, you like yoga? Why don't you go to India and get a yoga teacher training certification? And then I went online, just looked for some reviews and booked it right away. So yeah, and I went in India. I did the yoga teacher training in India in 2019. Very good experience, mate. Totally different from whatever I did before. They take you really out of your comfort zone, and that's when you start digging really into yourself, and you start discovering a lot of things of yourself. So yeah, it was a very, very, very good experience, and I think I came out of that with a lot of new skills, which are not just like knowing how to teach yoga, because to be honest, I'm a rugby coach. I love what I do. I don't want to become a full-time yoga teacher training. If you ask me today, you never know, you can change. And I haven't had the chance because I came back to New Zealand, then this lockdown started, so I haven't had the chance to do much of the yoga with the boys. But it's good, mate. It gives you a lot of information about yourself and how you can help other people also. It's very good.
You could be doing online yoga courses now. Yeah.
I know everyone is doing the same, mate. The people I met in December in India, they're all making money with that. But it's not me, to be honest.
No. But you say from a personal point of view, and also actually also for Freshbody, how you're taught to coach as a personal trainer, then how you're taught to coach as a rugby coach, how you're taught to coach weightlifting, possibly. I'm guessing that'd be fairly similar in some ways to the personal training thing, but it's also personal training to rugby, then to yoga. It's three distinctly different styles of coaching. So when you're dealing with somebody and you find that your message is not getting across, you have some other strings to your bow as to how to get that message across and how to train. And so having those different styles will make you a better coach by looking at things and taking things different sports.
I mean, yeah, you're totally right. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all humans, and we have all trends of behaviors that we can, attack and try to change. Reframing reality and changing reality is basically what all coaching is about. So it's creating a new reality better than the one that you had before. Is basically, in a nutshell, what coaching is. And helping people to develop and perform better is the other one. The thing is that also having all those tools has been good for me because it helps me to think outside of the box all the time. And as a not native English speaker, sometimes in New Zealand, you need to be really creative to get your message across. Especially when you don't have too much time, and then you don't have too much time for explanation. So you need to use your resources. You need to design activities, games, or anything that can help you maybe with less words to get your message across, So yeah, I'm really curious about different sports and different kinds of coaching, different kinds of disciplines, because I think all the time, for any conversation, for anything I read, every video I watch, I can take something that I can apply with my coaching, So yeah, I'm curious because of that reason. A constant, desire to improve.
Talking of video you've watched, it comes from what we were talking about pre-show. It comes across that you're a real student of the game. You've gone back and you've been rewatching game tape of your players, not just from the pre-season, but also from last season as well. So again, as you say, that constant thing about having to improve yourself and having to improve your view as to how you do things is coming through in your preparation as well, not just actually what you do on the pitch.
Yeah, well, most of the coaches these days, they have the resources and have the video camera or a video phone. You know, when you're talking about the amateur games, and coaches, you know, with the phone, they record and give instant feedback, or they get feedback. They get those files on the laptop and then go through them later. Yeah, I'm definitely more a student of the Scrum more than the game. I have to say that sometimes people catch me, you know, on the laptop watching Scrums from the Premiership, watching Scrums from Super Rugby, and then all the things that they listen from my office is crouch, bind, set all the time. You know, and I'm a firm believer that the more you watch things and you try to get another point of view and watch it again, so you see another thing. Sometimes you watch one Scrum and you're focusing on the front row, and sometimes you watch another Scrum and you're focusing on the locks. The same Scrum and you're focusing on the locks. So every time, the more repetitions you get on that, I think you have more chances of getting new stuff or new cues or seeing things different. So, yeah, I mean, the reason with some coaches have been talking about scrummaging, you know, in England, you know, these last couple of days, we were talking about some things from the locks. So how you deal with the difference in the heights of the front row. So we had, for example, you know, last year we had Ben May, which is a really tall prop, and then we had Joel Hintz, with a really short prop. So, you know, through watching trainings, I could see what was the knock-on effect or the domino effect that had on the locks. You know, so that's the valuable thing of having your things on tape, that you can go back, have a look, you know, and maybe, you know, plan for the future, or maybe solve problems, because at the end of the day, you had it before, you know.
So you've got. Do you use drones as well to get an overhead view, or do you just use ground-based cameras?
Well, we have a really legend as an analyst here in Hawke Bay, Stephen. So, and he's very good with me. So, all the Scrum sessions when we do, he has one view from each side of the Scrum, and then he puts the drone up, you know, all the time. So, you know, most of the trainings we have three angles of the camera, which is really, really good, because you can spot something one side that you're not spotting, but probably the problem is in the other side of the Scrum, you know. And then probably, you know, if you don't have the overview, the top view, you're not spotting some angle that's coming that's causing the problem. So yeah, I'm very lucky in that way to having, you know, the analyst that does all the job for you, you know.
So have you ever dropped a drone on top of the Scrum?
No,
no, not yet. Good.
No, yeah. Yeah, thank God.
Because if you watch the Super Rugby games at Eden Park, you can hear the drone taking off from the back pitch, but it doesn't come over the crowd because it's not allowed to, in case it does fall out of the sky. So they have it up, and that was good. And I also must be watching the. I don't know if you're watching the Global Rapid Rugby, but I went to the pre-season game between the China Lions and Samoa. I've forgotten the name of their team now. Manu Samoa, it's a bird from Samoa. And yeah, during that they had a drone up, but I think the drone only flew for about 10 minutes. So they had these two ladies who would be running off and getting new batteries and putting new batteries into it all the time. But anyway.
You need to plan.
You need to plan, exactly. They had that's interesting that you have, because I remember talking to the analyst down at Taranaki about 2 or 3 years ago, and he was saying they occasionally put the drone up, but not on a consistent basis. But it sounds like you guys have gone the full hog and have it on a regular basis. That's interesting to hear.
Gives you another set of tools, mate. You know, that's the thing. Gives you even not just scrummaging, you know, for, you know, face play or whatever, defense or whatever. If you can see the alignment of the players much better than from any other angle. So yeah, it's if you have it, makes sense. If, you know, fly it and put it up.
And yeah, we had a chat last week, and folks, if you want to have an armchair's guide to scrummaging, then go back and listen to that. It's on at drivingmall.com. But Yeah, that whole angles thing is a big thing, isn't it? It's that the different players are doing, not just the props, but also, as you say, your locks, because you've got your different heights of players. I remember one season, Gloucester got their recruitment wrong because they got I think it was a Foa who was an All Black. In the middle, they had big blonde hair, British and Irish Lions, and they had a full international prop front row, but because they were different heights, they didn't work together well in the scrum. So, when you're talking about recruitment, do you ever talk with the head coach and say, "Hey guys, I don't want any 5'4" props. I need 6'6". I need 6'4" props." Or does the physical size of a prop alter selection or getting involved?
For me, it's not that important how tall the props are. For me, it's if they can scrum and they have the right mentality and they're easy to coach. Of course, a bigger body and a taller prop is going to be probably better for line-out time for when they lift. That's why kind of the shorter prop has gone out of the game, started slowing, going out of the game because they need to lift also. But then for them, if he's really short, strong, and technically very good scrummaging prop, they are better because the center of mass is closer to the ground, so they're hard to move. A good example of that is Joel Hintz, who plays for Hawke's Bay. But when it comes to for recruitment, no, I'm not too picky. I will get whatever we have there, and I'll make it better, mate. As long as the boys can scrum and they want to scrum and they love it. For me, I don't have a personal preference, to be honest, mate. I think a tall prop or a short prop, they all have their space in the scrummaging side. Then yes, it can create some imbalances, with the locks, but it's other ways to solving that.
Okay. So you're mentioning there that there's discussions going on amongst scrum coaches around different heights of locks and things. So how much you said, because another thing you said pre thing was that you're spending a lot of time on discussion forums or discussion calls with other scrummaging coaches. How much sharing of information is there amongst all the coaches? And how much do you try and sort of protect your own IP?
The thing is, mate, I think, in New Zealand, I think it's better than most of the world in sharing information. I think most of the coaches over here are really, really open and they share everything, basically. And I think that's the right approach. Why? Because nobody's going to do things exactly the same as you do it. So if you have an idea of anything and you tell me, I would probably try to implement it. And I'll probably do it differently, So that's one. And the other one, the other thing, I think, the more, so if you have an idea, the more chances you have to put that idea on action, the better it is, because then if it works or not. So if for example, you're now a Scrum coach and I'll tell you, okay, this bind is working really well for me because this reason, and then you go and do it with your boys and you say, yeah, it works really good. Or you can say, no, it didn't work for me because probably, my prop was too short or too tall, or they were just not comfortable enough, So, coming back to your question, I think in New Zealand is very good. So you see, for example, yesterday I was on the Instagram and Jace Ryan was having a chat with one coach in France, and they talk about anything. Then you talk to Mike Cron. Mike Cron is open all the time. He will tell you whatever you ask. You talk to Dan Cron at the Hurricanes, he's also open. He talks. I had chats with Ben Afiaki last year. From the Blues, and I think that's really, really good. And now is starting to go around the world with that idea. And I think I know that one of the biggest reasons that New Zealand is so good in rugby is because they all share this information, and that gives a chance to players to be coached better, and they become better players. I don't think. If you contact the coaches around the world, especially at Scrum time, I don't think there's any point of not sharing whatever you know, because the other thing is that it's always changing, man. One year, you have one law, and then next year you have a different law, and it changes, and then the way they referee Scrum over here is different from the way they referee Scrum in France or in England. So, what's the point, man? Just go, get the more ideas you can, share with the world. If they're good enough, they're going to come back to you and tell you, oh, yeah, they're good, So,
I guess the other thing on it is that you only have, you only have your super players for about 4 or 5 months of the year, and the rest of the time they're with a different set of coaches. So when they come back from the Hurricanes or I'm not sure where you are, or the Chiefs, do you sit down your props and your hookers and go, okay, guys, tell me what you learned last season so I can kind of mine them for information that they've got from their super coaches?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm actually most of the time in contact with them anyway. During the Super Rugby season, asking them, what's going on. And they give me the feedback, I'm binding differently, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And then when they come officially, after the Super Rugby season, I have a meeting with them and tell my boys, what's your thoughts on things? This is the way we've been training. What do you think about that? Because you need to get the buy-in from them. If you get the buy-in is the key of doing something with purpose and doing it properly. So yeah, of course.
I think that's also another reason why New Zealand's got such good coaches, is because you have, if you come up with something revolutionary this season, by next season, because half your players have gone off and mixed with a whole bunch of other players, and then all those other players have gone back to different teams, every other team knows your secret, because it kind of because of players. Yeah. Whereas in Europe, the players play in the same team the whole time. So if you have something revolutionary that people can't spot, you can actually make gains out of that for 2 or 3 seasons. Whereas here, it lasts for 1 season because of all that mixing of the players. And I think it takes a while. Yeah, good ideas spread around a lot quicker in New Zealand because of that, I think.
Definitely.
So it seems like you're, as you say, an absolute student of the game, student of the Scrum. Does that mean your ambitions are to stay in scrummaging, or do you, and to sort of make your way up through the grades, or do you want to go from a Scrum coach to a forwards coach to a head coach? What's your career goals at the moment?
Well, that's a good question, man. I'm not too sure. I've been thinking about that a lot. I love rugby. I'm a rugby coach. I love all the areas of the game. I would love to stay in my specialty, my area of expertise for a couple of seasons, and then who knows? But I want to coach as high as I can, and I work every day and I prepare every day to get to the next level. Probably, being a specialist as a Scrum coach has given me, the chance to be where I am now, but I'm not too sure, to be honest. I love the Scrums and I want to stay here for a bit. But then definitely a forwards coach would be, a nice thing. Forwards coach who I will try to get and, do the lineups also, because that's the other area I like. And mauling, I love mauling also. But then as a head coach, who knows, mate? Who knows? I can't answer that question at the moment, mate.
And that's one of the things I've not. What is the remit of a forwards coach? So obviously you just mentioned that obviously it's Scrum, line out, maul, but does rucking come under the forwards, or does that come under attacking and defence coaches? What kind of where's that line between the sort of forwards coach and then the attack coach or the defence coach?
That varies about the coaching team you have. It depends. Usually, when you're a Scrum coach, you look after mauling. Sorry. When you're a forwards coach, you look after mauling, scrummaging, and lineouts as a main area of responsibility. But then, if you're good at the breakdown, probably you go in there. If you're good at other things, you go in there also. That's kind of you have racking. You have counter rack in defense, and you have the breakdown in attack. It's an attack coach and a defense coach can do it. But for example, us in the Bay, we have Simsy, which is defense coach and also breakdown. He's very, very good at breakdown at defense and also does the lineups. he's the main forwards coach.
Mm-hmm.
He also does defense, and the breakdown is his area of expertise. But that changed. When I was in England, it was different. One of the coaches did just the forwards, and then the other coach was doing all the rest. It varies on your coaching team, and then who looks after what. But then at the end of the day, mate, everyone has their opinion in all the areas of the game because of the same thing that you were mentioning before. More brains thinking about that is better than just you thinking about that. Someone can think and spot things different than you do. So if they give you feedback, which is even better,
Yeah, and it was also interesting. I remember hearing Laurie, the guy at the Brumbies, Laurie Fisher, that's what I'm talking about, and he was saying how that actually the way they split up their coaching team was so that they could actually run two defensive patterns at the same time. So even if someone was actually the defense coach, but because they all worked together and discussed things together, they could run the same drill. Because obviously, I was talking with Dale McLeod down at Southland. He's got 51 players or something like that. I think it was 52 players. So if you've got that many at a training session, you can run multiple things. And if you wanted to do defense, you can just run defense. You don't have to have half the team doing defense, half the team doing attack, if you've got your coaches talking together. So it's interesting how, as you say, different coaching setups the chemistry there alters how you can what you can do.
Well, yeah, I think that transfers into any aspect of life or any trade in human activity. You have a team that works together. The better they can liaise and know each other and split, the areas of responsibility and the way they do things is even better. But you need to have over here we have very good leadership from the CEO and then from the head coach Mark Olsich, which is very good and makes things very easy to everybody. And then me as a Scrum coach, and then Simsy, is the other one. We talk all the time. We're in the office. They ask my opinion. I ask the opinion to the other guys about the scrummaging. And then we have also, so in rugby specific, is in any team sport, is really, important to work with the players. We have our leadership groups, our Scrum group, our lineup group. So you need also the feedback from them, and the bigger the rapport is with players and other coaches and your peers, the better it's going to be. They're going to trust you. The better it's going to be. That's the end. That's as simple as that.
I think one of the things you keyed on earlier was that you like any size player, as long as they're enthusiastic for scrummaging and they're willing to learn. Laurie Fisher also, one of the reasons that the Brumbies are good at line-up mauls is because they deliberately hire or bring in people into the squad who enjoy mauls. They don't train it that much, but they enjoy doing it, and that's the big thing. If you have a focus, is getting players who enjoy doing what you want them to do. I think is a big thing.
That's the key, mate. That's the key. So that's why, for example, back in the day, not so much these years, teams in Europe tend to get props from Argentina because they had a reputation of liking scrummaging, and Georgians. Remember, there was a time they had a lot of Georgians in France and England. Yeah, because those boys wanted to scrum. So yeah, it's like, I don't know, mate. If you want a dancing partner, probably you're gonna get a girl from Central America, not a girl from England. There you go, because you know what I mean. So yeah, because it tends to be that from that country the culture goes around. Something. From dancing. It's like the same with the Kiwis and rugby. People, when they think about New Zealand or they, think about New Zealand players, they assume that they're going to be half decent players, which is basically most of the cases is true because they've been brought up with this sport and they know a lot of the sport. So it is like that. So you need to, I agree with you. Sometimes, the best, in scrums particularly, the best scrummaging teams are not the biggest or the strongest guys, are the guys that like it more than one and more. And that's also one thing that you have to coach, the mentality. You want to make them love what they do, because it's really, really important. It's not the bright. It's not where you get all the lights and all the, the rewards right away. It's not the offloads are not there, but scrummaging without a good scrum, you're not going to go anywhere, mate. And then the best example is the World Cup final, mate. The best example. South Africa just out-scrummed England out of the park, and that was it. That was done for the English team. Done,
Well,
so you as an English fan, you know it, right?
I think you're part of the vanguard of Chilean and Brazilian props and scrummagers that are going to come over, because having seen the way that the New Zealand Maoris were given a hard time on their tour 2 years ago to Brazil and to Chile, there's a lot of good forwards to come out of those countries in the near future. So so yes, I think you are the first and the trailblazer for a lot of those. Thank you very much. It has been a fascinating talk, hearing about your journey, and it's been some really interesting places, and really wish you the best of luck in your coaching career, and to go all the way, basically, to the top.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you for the invitation. That's awesome.
And thank you everyone who's watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and all of that kind of stuff on whichever channel you're watching this on, because we're available on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, as well as coming out as a podcast here on New Zealand Sport Radio.